Now, let's have a conversation on this very interesting assessment by the Sanitation Minister. Joining us via Zoom is the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. Arthur Ahin is actually Vice Chairman for CONUAS, and he's joined us. Now, Mr. Ahin, is 85% a fair representation of the sanitation situation in Accra or even across the country?
Thank you very much. Let me say good afternoon to your viewers. It's not something that we can confirm. I mean, we do not have the indicators. We do not have the justification. And so if there is any set of indicators that the minister is using, well, I am not privy to that. As far as I'm aware, there is no strategic plan for achieving this vision. We have not cited any plan. We say that this and this are what we are going to do to become the cleanest city in Africa. Well, it is true that some positive developments have happened in recent times, and we all admit to that, and we commend the minister and the ministry for taking the initiatives, especially also in partnership with private sector players like Zoomlion and other service providers. Quite a lot has happened in this direction during the COVID-19 period. The intensified distribution of bins, cleanup exercises, and all that have happened. But I am not too sure that these will translate immediately into achieving 85% of this vision. It is not something that we have done an assessment on. And if you push me, I will say it is something that is likely not to be so, because it takes a lot more to be able to achieve that high level. And let me remind you that as a country, we still have 22% of our population defecating in the open. About 25% of the population are patronizing public toilets. 21%, only 21% has access to improved toilet facilities.
Right.
You go to our schools and the story is the same.
Right.
70% of waste is collected through door-to-door and municipal arrangements. And so it will be difficult for us to believe that all of a sudden we can move to 85%.
Let me refer you to a publication by a Kenyan news portal, which ranks Accra as third cleanest city in the country, after Kigali, which comes first, and Windhoek in Namibia, which comes second. And we understand that this is a source from UGC, of course, and we understand that even some 5 months ago, Accra was actually placed at number 2 after Kigali in Rwanda. Now, does this not suggest that perhaps we should be looking at this in a more comparative sense, as opposed to the figures you churn out, which are national in figure, in character, I mean?
Yes, I agree with you that if you are talking about Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa, yes, you have to do a comparative analysis. But, I mean, some of us have traveled to some African countries, and I'm sure you have also. And sometimes when you see the difference, nobody should tell you that we are a little way, further, down the ladder. And I think that we need to do a lot more. Of course, many African countries also have similar situations. But I believe that we should not be comparing ourselves to those who are already down there. I think that there are best practices in Africa. You mentioned Kigali. There are some other African countries who are doing much better in terms of cleanliness in their cities. And I think those are the countries we should be looking at. Let me also mention that I have not witnessed increased financing in recent times. And these are some of the things you look out for when you want to see whether we are making improvement or not. We have not seen increased financing. We have not seen improved law enforcement. We have not seen any sustained public education. We are not seeing structured support to the waste management companies. And if we are able to resource the waste management companies, then we'll be seeing a lot more from them, because let me tell you that we have one of the best, or some of the best waste management companies in Africa.
Right.
And I think that we only need to resource them just a little, and they will do, I mean, marvelously well.
So how would you rate government then? How would you rate government? What percentage figure would you give government?
It will be difficult for me, and I don't want to hazard any guess, because I have not seen the blueprint. We have not developed indicators, and these are the areas where we expect that government will work closely with civil society, so that we can develop the indicators together and track them together. But without having the indicators, it will be difficult for me to, I mean, guess. But my recommendation will be that let's resource environmental service providers adequately, waste management companies. I mean, if we could have 10 Zoom lions in Ghana, I mean, you can imagine how this country will be. Let's invest in material recovery, treatment, composting, and recycling of waste. But for me, I don't think that we are anywhere near 85% in terms of achieving the president's vision of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa.
You mentioned that civil society should have been consulted in developing indicators, for instance. Does it mean that even for measuring of the progress that government has made, government is doing this all alone?
Of course, I mean, we have been in consultation with government and the ministry on several other things, development of policies and strategies, plans, and all that. But as far as I'm concerned, there was very little involvement of civil society in, for example, the launching of the National Sanitation Campaign, and also the declaration of Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa. I mean, very little from civil society in terms of inputs. And I am saying that going forward, we need to work closely together, because if we are going to track progress, we will be tracking them together. Civil society in Ghana has a lot of capacity. And if we are able to work with them closely, I think that we should be able to find innovative solutions to the sanitation challenges that confront this country.
Aren't we speaking of this a bit late in the day, the fact that government should have involved civil society, because we have just a few months to go to the deadline of this promise, which is the end of the first term of the president?
Yes, you see, as a civil society coalition, what we do is to offer support to government in terms of policy development, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, tracking of performance, review, and all that. We have been in touch with government. In terms of the National Sanitation Campaign, for example, we have done a comprehensive assessment of the president's directives on the day he launched the campaign. And we have rated it in terms of yellow, red, yellow, or green. And the report is available. We have shared it widely. It's also on the internet. But I'm saying that on this very one, I am not aware of any document, not any indicators, which will point us to what to look out for if we are going to assess. Perhaps what we need to do is to do our own set of indicators we think should happen in Accra becoming the cleanest city in Africa. And that's, I assure you, we will do. And then when we are done, I think that we'll publish our findings for Ghanaians to see. And then we'll also give our recommendations.
Which is interesting, Mr. Ahen, because one would have expected that for a measure as international as the cleanest city in Africa, it will not be left to governments to develop how they are going to be measured. Don't these measures already exist? Don't we already have international bodies dedicated to sanitation and clean water, which are already measuring these?
Oh, yes. I mean, when you talk about the broader water and sanitation sector, we have standard indicators that we use to measure. And that one is ongoing. We have been doing that. But, you know, this is a peculiar project. This is something that is a vision of the president. And once the president speaks, we are happy because we believe that appointees will get into action. and begin to put things together. But so far, let me be frank with you, in terms of the policy of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa, I am yet to see the set of indicators we are working with. I am yet to see the kind of programs we are rolling out. I am yet to see the financing for this. And so it is quite difficult for us to be able to speak to this. I mean, now that the minister has, given a rating, maybe we can also quickly do a quick assessment and then come out with our own findings. But as far as I'm aware, we do not have any such indicators available for this particular project.
Right, it's a bit difficult to appreciate when you say that there has been no funding line, because this is expected to be the broad vision, and the budgetary allocations, the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, should be geared towards achieving this altogether. Is that not the case?
Yes, that is the case. I mean, that is the expectation, that the budget of the ministry will go into this, to achieving this. But when you have a budget that does not change significantly from previous years, it's difficult for you to appreciate what level of funding we are putting into this. And like I said, we don't need to even put too much into this, because we already have private sector who are doing very, very well. We just need to resource them. We just need to support them to be able to deliver. And from where I sit, I am saying that the support to these private sector players is not something that we expected.
Mr.
We expect a lot more support for these private sector players.
Mr. Ahin, you mentioned support to private sector as a place that is lacking. But I'm asking a question about the overall commitment of governments to the achievement of this. And my question here is that, should we not be measuring the budget lines by simply what the Sanitation Ministry is doing in their budget? Because that is what should be going to, achieve the overall aim of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit.
I'm saying that, should we not just be tracking what the Sanitation Ministry is doing with what monies they have been allocated in the budget?
Yeah, and I am saying that from where I sit, very little goes into the sanitation subsector. Very, very little.
How much goes into
it? Very, very little goes into that. In fact, every year, if you are aware, we do a budget analysis. We are yet to do that for this year, for obvious reasons. But we will do it. But I can tell you that the amount we expect to go into the sanitation subsector does not go. We expect a lot more to be able to, achieve improved sanitation. You need to invest a lot more in the sanitation subsector.
And so far, we are not seeing
that kind of investment.
In 2018, we found that about $300 million goes into sanitation in the country every year. Is that a figure you dispute?
No, it's not a figure I dispute. But you see, the sanitation sector requires a lot more. Perhaps, if I show you the investment plan for the sector, then you appreciate how much should go into the sector annually.
Can you give us an idea
with how much goes into it annually in practical terms?
Can you give us an idea how much you expect
the
to go
levels
into it?
Of funding are quite low.
Can you give us an idea how much you expect to go into it? Can you give us an idea, Mr. Ahin, how much you expect to go into the sanitation sector every year?
In fact, from even conservative estimates, you should be expecting about 5% of GDP going into your sanitation sector. And you can imagine 5%. 5% is much, much, much higher than what we have been doing. Let me tell you that we have been doing not more than 2%. The highest we have gone has been 1.4% of GDP in terms of budgetary allocations to the sanitation subsector. In fact, to the wash sector entirely. And that is not good enough. We are expecting that at least 5% will go into this sector to be able to achieve improvement in your sanitation services delivery.
Thank you very much, Atta Ahin, for joining us. He is the Vice Chairman for the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation.